So everyone, this is the Agile Austin coaching group. We meet the first Monday of every month. And once we went into pandemic, we moved our meeting from being in person to being online via Zoom. So this is going pretty well. So we are part of Agile Austin. We're a nonprofit and we meet really to just the exchange of ideas, professional growth. We're lucky because Agile Austin is one of the largest Agile chapters probably in the country. Our platinum sponsor is Agile Velocity, and followed by several other of the gold, silver, and bronze sponsors here. And we're really happy to have all of them because they make evenings like this possible for us. So, like I said, Agile Austin is a very large, very active Agile group. You can go to almost at least 2, if not apparently 4, coaching SIGs per week. And we've got everything from lean and Kanban to leaders to scaling to scrum masters to product to DevOps to coaching circles to architecture. You name it, Agile Austin probably has something for you. Also, most of these are online, so you can attend any one that you want, and they're all free of charge. So tonight, well, forgot about this. We meet, like I said, the first Monday of every month. Normally, we meet in person at UShip or remotely via Zoom. My name is Erin Randall, and I'm one of your hosts. The other host is Brittany Durden. And we've got email addresses for us both right there, but we would also love to connect with you on LinkedIn because that's where we also start talking a lot about when we have upcoming groups and the like. But tonight, we have Rob Brodell. He is here to talk with us about, can't we just get along? The relationship between Agile coaching and product teams. As Agilists, we engage with the product side if we want to achieve all that we've aimed to do. So Rob has a lot of federal experience. He's worked for companies like Capital One, and he's really one of the most engaging product coaches I've ever seen, talk to, or work with. He is based out of Richmond, Virginia, but he's coming to us, obvious. Good Lord, maybe I should edit this part out. He's coming to us tonight remotely, and we're really glad to have him there. So Rob, with that, I'm going to turn the show over to you.
Thank you, Erin and Brittany. I am going to start a screen share here. Thank you for bearing with me.
And before we get started, I'm going to ask everyone to go on mute right now and perhaps to turn off their video until Rob asks us to either turn cameras on or turn voice on. It will just make it easier. We won't have to worry if we need to mute or unmute everyone.
Thank you, Erin. Mm-hmm. All right, so tonight's going to be pretty straightforward, but before we get started, if you're just joining us now, you can go to the chat and click the link or manually type in this poll everywhere poll. Respond to the question that's there, and we're about to look at the results for what everyone said. To kick things off here tonight, it's going to be best if we move forward as a group and really a dynamic workshop. So please do feel free to engage and leave questions in the chat. Erin's going to monitor the chat and shout out the questions as we go along. So feel free to post your questions up there. Do stay on mute throughout if you can, just because the feedback's going to kill the recording and make it hard for everyone who couldn't attend tonight but wants to watch later to actually tune in. So use the chat as much as you want to ask questions, and let's get started looking up your responses to that warm-up exercise. All right, so what did we have here? The question was pretty straightforward. You're the new Agile coach, but maybe you aren't an Agile coach and you're a Scrum Master or someone in another role who wants to be an Agile coach one day. No matter what, you're wanting to work with a delivery team. You're new to the team. What's the product team? Right off the bat, my favorite answer is monsters. So whoever put that, maybe we can hear more about your negative experience over a drink later tonight. They're a client I'm their advocate. A lot of client here, a TBD, we don't really know. And they're the partner you want to engage and hear and build a relationship. Varying viewpoints, probably based on all of our varying experiences, right? Truth be told, product people set the foundation for a lot of delivery team practices. If product and strategy requirements are well scoped and maintained and communicated, then our tactical delivery is going to start strong. The reverse here is also true. Starting with tactics and then building strategic justifications, that's ripe with confirmation bias. What I mean by that is you can't just cut product out. Teams that go from we can do X to we should do X to X is the best option because without a strategic overlay, those teams wind up with a product that at best is marginally successful in the market and needs major overhauls to scale, and at very worst has no market at all and is insanely unmanageable from an infrastructure standpoint. This is probably one of the top 3 problems for digital and mobile development. Jumping into tactical DevOps, jumping into tactical development without a strategic product overlay. In this session, we're going to define strong product thinking practices and explore how you, no matter where you sit, can influence and grow those practices for yourself and for your team to be more successful. The agenda's pretty straightforward. You're going to get 3 main things from the conversation here tonight. The first is targeted product thinking. The second is really insight into where your team and you could build better partnerships with product or use more of that product thinking. And the third is a small toolkit that you and your teams can apply right away tomorrow to boost your strategy and then revisit that toolkit as you need to fine tune going forward. We'll weave in some fun cultural references to try and keep us all actually paying attention on our remote screen. But let's see how it goes. We'll start here with another exercise on powerful questions. And for those of you who haven't worked with Erin or seen her presentations before, know that I'm going to oversimplify powerful questions and you can turn to her for more help with this tool. It's a great one for coaching. Powerful questions are really open-ended questions that promote engagement and dialogue. So with that overlay, here's a list, 2 lists actually, on the left and the right of powerful questions. Back on Poll Everywhere, that link we started with at the beginning of the night, those 2 lists are about to pop up. I want you to read through those lists there and click the list on the left or the list on the right, whichever one you think is powerful product questions. The hint here is that they're all powerful questions, but one group on the left or the right doesn't exhibit product thinking. Which group, going to Poll Everywhere now, do you think exhibits product thinking? Click the left or the right. And we'll see the responses start to come in here live on screen. So everyone, a few seconds to go back to the link. Seeing big clusters on the left, not much activity on the right. Okay, so yeah, we're pretty much getting it, right? All of these are powerful questions. They'd all promote dialogue, but the ones on the right are team-based questions. They don't exhibit product thinking. They need to be followed up with a question from the left to get down to business and customer details inherent to product thinking. So an example of that would be if we started on the right with the question, what should we be doing? We're going to have to then ask, what's important about that? Or what's the impact? You know, one of those questions from the left. The goal of product thinking here is to maximize positive impact for users and your business. And I want to hit pause there because that's really important. I want to call out that what we won't cover is how to define positive impact. Product thinking and the toolkit that we're going to walk through should be used to deliver positive impact, whatever you and your leadership think that is. We're skipping the beginning of strategy development and the ethical conversations that come with deciding what positive really means for your users and for your business. That's a separate metrics workshop. Instead, we're going to focus on the agile and delivery team experience that's relevant for most of the audience here today. So from an agile point of view, product thinking starts by putting the customer and your strategy to meet their needs in the driver's seat ahead of tactical planning. An example is a roadmap that sits above the product backlog and informs not only what goes into the backlog, but how you prioritize the backlog. Developing your team's product thinking is going to have a lot of benefits too. It's going to minimize rework thanks to strategic alignment. It's going to minimize confusion and time spent unraveling confusion. You're going to be able to get right to the product thinking questions on the left-hand side of the screen. And it's going to maximize the impact of your delivery. Product thinking plus strong prioritization equals maximum impact every single time your team does something. So the fundamental question we're going to answer here today is, how can I strengthen product thinking on my team? And to do that, we need a bit of a wake-up call. The list on the left includes categories of product-oriented success metrics. My question for you, and you can throw it out in the chat here, my question for you is, what's missing? What's missing from this list of different metric categories that you interact with every day as an Agilist? We see value, velocity. Yeah, Josh, velocity is actually right here. Output and process metrics like velocity, time spent to develop, time to delivery, those aren't product success metrics. All of these metrics you see on screen, these different categories, focus on the product's actual performance in the hands of users and the business impact that interaction has. Remember, product thinking's goal is to maximize the positive impact for users and your business. A great development process does not cause product success. This is a wake-up call for a lot of us as Agilists. We can have the best development process in the world, and that doesn't mean that we're going to have product success. At best, a strong product and development process can surface insights and drive action to deliver something that helps the product succeed in the hands of users based on those success metrics that we see some of on the left here. Sometimes there's a correlation, but never causation between development process and product success. The rest of this,
I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
I was having the word feedback was coming up a few times in the chat regarding what you had here on the screen.
Feedback in terms of a metric. Yeah, I think that in terms of a metric, feedback is really, I would say, a data point and not so much a metric. We're fast tracking through some of the metric conversation, but feedback being something we can measure and use to then go out there and actually gauge whether our products are boosting activation, whether they're making our users happy, whether they're engaging users in the first place or causing them to refer our product and our services to others. That's how I conceptualize feedback in this sense.
So I'm also getting some point. It's not so much a metric, but a missing point, a missing item here on your honeycomb.
Yeah, so the honeycombs there on the left, those are, and I appreciate that, they're meant to be product success metrics. So feedback is a mechanism that can inform those product success metrics. It isn't necessarily a metric in and of itself. So uh, I think that that's a really good point. How we collect metrics, how we decide whether we're having success or not, that's ancillary to picking which of these things on the left. And this is an abbreviated list in the honeycombs.
Mhm.
Picking which one of those defines success for our product, or is it something else entirely? That's the beginning of strategy.
Okay.
It doesn't include things like velocity. It doesn't include things like whether or not our team is happy. It doesn't include things like how long it takes us to develop components or deliver them. It doesn't even include whether we're doing iterative development or waterfall. It's all about the experience users have with our product and whether that creates a positive impact for our business and for those users. And the rest of the presentation is going to dig into that a little more and give everyone kind of an overview of the skills and tools we need to build strong agile processes that maximize the correlation with product success, because there is no causation there. So let's take a look at how this conversation normally goes.
Okay.
So on screen here, Dilbert illustrates the crux of most product process improvement conversations. We come in with a question like, what process can we put in place to get better products? And then we get lost in the surface level process question and end up just saying, hire an expert. I think we've all lived through that a few times in our professional lives. So let's break things down instead of in process terms. Let's break things down in terms of skills and tools. We'll start by exploring the product thinking skills that lead to that maximized positive impact for users in your business. And we'll visualize those skills as a funnel, a powered funnel. Kind of like if you think of the lottery, this funnel is full of ping pong balls that are skills bouncing off one another. They're powered, and at the end, impactful product strategy and tactics plops out through the filter. It's a bit abstract, but it'll come to fruition a little more as we go through, starting with the first skill, which is focused empathy. We've explored this aspect of product thinking in depth. If you take anything away from the presentation, it should be that focused empathy is table stakes for product thinking, whether it's customers and users, business needs, or stakeholder needs. How do we maximize their positive impact and experience with our product? Empathy alone is going to generate product understanding, things like the knowledge to make good decisions about design, the knowledge to prioritize well, a product journey map or personas to understand who our users and stakeholders are, and even identifying development metrics. That's all product understanding. And then you toss in a skill like lateral thinking. This is where we do things like discovery, experimentation, certain forms of problem solving. With empathy, this generally results in strategy, things like a mission statement, a product vision, clear product objectives. Lateral thinking is a skill and as a thing we do in the agile and product world takes a lot of different formats. It's something like asking the 5 whys, brainstorming alternatives, journey mapping with concept formation, even focused user studies and A/B testing, where we fraction the journey map into a small bite and examine and explore different potential enhancements and whether they actually have the impact we set out to achieve. Really, any form of experimentation is where we're using primarily lateral thinking skills. And most of the time in product, when we're generating options, we are using some lateral thinking skills. But if you have that focused empathy and you're using mainly linear thinking, at that point you're doing technical solutioning, risk management. You're organizing the backlog, organizing your workflow. You're doing very linear forms of problem solving. And with empathy, this generally results in tactics, a completed, prioritized roadmap or backlog, metrics that you're tracking and inferring data from. Linear thinking exercises are things like prioritizing, building business cases. At least most of it is an exercise in linear thinking. And almost any pipeline-driven development methodology is going to force us to think in a very linear manner about what we're developing and how we're identifying what we're going to develop. In fact, most of the time when we're planning, we're using linear thinking skills. So these three different skill sets, linear and lateral thinking and empathy, bouncing off one another in the funnel, they're powered by something, and that something is thoughtfulness. It's a really PG term, thoughtfulness, but the dictionary definition hits on two things. The first is an anticipation of the needs and the wants of others. Yes, that calls out focused empathy purposefully here. It also puts the pressure on lateral and linear thinking, where we're anticipating the needs and wants of stakeholders and of people downstream in the strategy development process who are going to need to consume our strategy and actually develop on top of it those tactics as well. The second part of the thoughtfulness definition is mindful and careful reasoned thinking. And that's the part that powers this funnel overall. Engaging in lateral thinking and linear thinking and focused empathy, those are mindful decisions we make to engage those skills at very specific times to create product strategy and tactics. And there's a filter at the end too. That filter that those skills pass through is context. Context on organizational norms and culture, product history, company history, domain knowledge. That filter plus lateral thinking, linear thinking, and focused empathy skills being applied in a thoughtful way is how you get impactful product strategy and tactics. Let's walk through a quick case study of this that might answer some people's questions. In this case study, it's very basic. We're developing a new application that has a front end, a back end, and 3 widgets, widgets A, B, and C. So let's jump right in with linear thinking and develop some tactics. This is a waterfall approach, and I know all of us as Agilists are booing and hissing waterfall showing up in a coaching presentation here. The approach would be simply do the back end, then the front end, and deliver the whole thing with our limited resources. So let's add in a little bit of context, some lateral thinking, and user and business empathy that are going to unearth important strategy. And that strategy, all that tells us is that we have 0 users today. We need an acquisition pipeline. Why are users going to want to inquire the app? We've got to go out and answer that question with some lateral thinking experimentation. And we find out that widgets A and B in that order are what's going to cause people to actually acquire the app we're building. At this point, we can toss in some linear tactical thinking to create a strategy. We're going to continue to do lateral thinking and experimentation to figure out what users could get from widget C and then work it into the delivery plan later once we know what value it brings to the users and how it impacts acquisition. But in the meantime, let's develop widget A's back end, A and B's front end, deliver what we have at that point, put a message on it that says widget B is soon to come, then develop widget B's back end and deliver it all. And all of a sudden, we have an app that maximizes our user experience for acquisition, our business purpose. Impactful strategy and tactics here led us to iterative development, but it's a lot more than iterative development, the way Agile methodologies teach it. This is iterative value delivery because we have a strong strategic overlay. Our goal is maximizing value for users and business every step of the way, every time we have that sub-bullet that says deliver. And it's tough to do this day to day. We could lack the resources to develop what is on the roadmap. We could need to gauge our own ability and then pivot when we find out that widget C is suddenly more important to acquisition than widget B. New intent could come from our business partners that we have to account for. It's really easy in these moments to fall back on linear thinking and context filtering alone without using our whole funnel that includes lateral thinking skills and thoughtfully applied empathy here. The good news is that anyone can build and practice the skills you see in this funnel, but there are major challenges. Operating the funnel alone in your brain is going to get overwhelming for all of us. And context switching between these skills has real impacts that lead to burnout. In other words, product managers and product owners can't be the only stewards of product thinking in your organization. We can't do it alone. So who should be product thinking? To answer that, let's explore how product thinking takes place throughout your Agile organization. And we're going to take a pause here where everyone goes back over to Pull Everywhere, please. We're about to jump back into Pull Everywhere. And Erin, if there are any questions out there, we can take a quick second to answer.
There is. This one is coming in. Would you tailor your approach depending on where the product is in the product site lifecycle?
Yep, tailoring an approach based on where the product is in the product lifecycle. That would be a great example of using your context filter. Your context filter is where your product lifecycle, your product history knowledge lives. And you're going to use that along with these lateral thinking, empathy, and linear thinking skills to figure out what your next steps strategically and from a tactic standpoint are, and what it takes to iteratively deliver value. Great question.
That was the only one that was coming up there for right now. So I think when you're ready, keep going.
Yeah. So let's talk teams. If everyone is in Pull Everywhere, I will catch up to you right here. And we can go through what is a very confusing diagram on screen together. So before you start clicking around to answer the question, who uses product thinking, let me tell you who's on this screen. This is a pretty straightforward Scrum or Agile diagram with the delivery team or the Scrum team in the right-hand corner, and then a product team overlapping that on the left-hand, more oblong, oval side there. And it starts with executive leadership and some folks in a box up there. That box is purposeful. It is your organization, the whole darn thing. Everyone from your lines of business, marketing, sales, through finance and other back-end folks, and then the people we work with on a more daily basis in engineering leadership, product leadership, and maybe a PMO or program management office. This is a hierarchical organization for a lot of us in enterprise teams, but it exists in startups as well, where you have people who might be wearing multiple hats, but are very much still intent owners of sales, or who are very much in charge of finance. This box, along with your product manager, is your product team. They are the people who are primary stewards of the strategy for your product. And they work through the product manager with a product owner, passing information back and forth on the delivery and Scrum team. That team overlaps with product, where you might have some analysts, some tech writers, UI type folks even, who are part of the product team and part of the delivery team. And the delivery team's led by a Scrum Master with engineers and an engineering lead. Might be a simplified model, but is hopefully adaptable to a lot of our organizations. What you notice about this model, where we get some deeper insight, is that org chart on your top left-hand side in the product team is color-coded. Your people who are primarily responsible for product are orange, engineering and delivery teamwork are blue. Everyone else, including folks in a PMO, are green. These are ancillary to engineering or product type roles purposefully. And you'll notice that our little stick figure us's throughout the diagram have different color arms and legs sometimes. So let's explore that. The legs, those show who that stick figure follows. So you have some tech writer and UI folks down here and a delivery lead whose legs are green because they're following the R&D component, user experience, or PMO verticals within the organization. Those are the people who they report up to. And then you have folks with different color arms, like your delivery lead, whose arms are orange. And that is because they are like your tech writer or UI folks, whose arms are green. And that is because they're primarily doing user experience or research and development or tech writing type tasks that fall a bit outside and support product or engineering delivery. But the folks who face and work primarily on engineering issues and the engineering team, your arms are blue. That's your product owner, your analysts, your delivery lead, your actual engineering team. And the folks who do primarily product work, the product manager, their arms are orange. So start to click around who uses product thinking skills the way we just conceptualized them and walked through them in this diagram of your team. And we're seeing folks popping up with answers everywhere. And that really is the right answer here. It's a trick question for a reason. The answer is that throughout the entire picture, everyone's head should probably be a little bit orange. It's not the reality for most of us, but that's the way it probably should be. Honestly, it's way too much for a handful of people, a product owner and a product manager, to act as this funnel of product thinking alone for an organization. To break that down a little bit scientifically and give you some logic behind this, organizational theory tells us that 150 people maximum can act efficiently together with cohesion. And organizations get big fast. Think of how many people you have in sales, in marketing, in R&D, let alone in engineering, product, your PMO. If only 2 people are doing the product thinking for that entire organization to meet its goals, then gaps in their efficiency are going to sap momentum and undermine the organization's success. So if organizational success is predicated on product success, we need to build a strong coalition and culture of product thinking through the entire organization in order to maximize our product's positive impacts for users and our business. Improving product thinking for your teams starts with introspection. So over the next few days and weeks, ask yourself the questions you see on screen to gain insight in your own opportunities to improve product thinking. In this diagram, where do you stand? Who do you follow and what role do you play? What color are your legs? And why do you follow that direction? How are you using your arms? Who are you interacting with? Why are the tasks you're doing with your arms important? How far does your influence reach with those arms? And what color is your head? Who's really doing the product thinking in your organization? As you answer that for yourself, turn these questions on your team and study your team and ask these questions and really identify individuals or groups who could use more product thinking skills, whether it's product thinking arms wrapping around them and helping them develop those skills, or whether it's building product thinking in their own brains and turning their own arms a little bit orange. Here's a quick tip. If folks with the word product in their title are spending a lot of time saying no to the development team or no to that hierarchical structure you see in the top left of the product team, then somewhere there's a gap in product thinking. Your product folks might not realize that gap exists or have the tools, let alone bandwidth, to intervene and help right size that gap. This is where we need help from coaches. And let me add a caveat here. If your product folks, your product manager and your PO with this orange arrow between them, have an orange arrow going up to this hierarchical structure of leadership in your company, and they're the only ones taking product information, impacts, and roadblocks to people in, say, engineering leadership, in sales, in the PMO, then you have a gap in product thinking. They shouldn't be standing alone. They should have support from engineers when they're talking to engineering leadership. They should have support from agilists when they're talking to folks in the PMO or elsewhere in the company. This is where coaches can help build a healthy product culture and healthy product practices. As a primer for thinking about this, let's do one more quick activity in Poll Everywhere. Thank you to Scrum Alliance. This is the Scrum framework at a glance. We're all probably used to seeing it. Where in this framework should product thinking be a native skill for the people involved in the exercises? Go ahead and click where you think product thinking should be used as a native skill in a ceremony or in creating some output. And it's really all over the map, just like we're seeing here up on screen. That is exactly the right answer. To successfully maximize positive impact for users in your business, product thinking needs to be a native skill through the entire Scrum process. The same is true of Kanban or any other delivery methodology. Everyone needs to have some level of product awareness and product thinking. And here's what that looks like in practice. Might not be this ugly, but teams with strong product thinking answer some specific questions to generate a product that maximizes value for users in their business on the other side of the development process. There's 6 of those questions, and here's a basic breakdown of what they are and the product or development team folks who are primarily responsible for leading the conversation on each one. And it's your basic 6 questions: who, what, why, when, where, and how. The who, what, and why, that comes with a lot of product strategy sitting above tactics. Your product team is primarily the steward of those strategy conversations. When, where, and how, that's when the development team gets engaged with the product team. And in some places, the development team owns the conversation outright. The rest of this presentation is going to focus on how to leverage product thinking and make sure these questions are answered at a strategic and tactical level. Basically, we're going to explore more precise versions of these questions and how and when to use them. Before we jump over to that toolkit, I'm going to pause. Erin, are there any questions?
Yes, we've got 2. So Sherry was asking, and this was about your slide with the colored arms, legs, and heads. Was, hold on, I have to scroll up and it's not letting me at the moment. Will you explain what head color, arm usage, and legs refer to?
Okay, and just the second question, real quick.
Second question actually pertains to this slide. What does the where mean exactly?
Yeah, let's start there since we're on this slide. Where in this context can mean 2 or 3 different things. I really appreciate this question being asked. Thank you. Where can mean technically where in our product stack, architecture, will this be delivered? It can also mean where in our user experience will this product or will this widget that we're working on, this feature, be loaded? Where will users experience this on their customer journey? If your teams aren't answering both of those questions in the tactical planning, you've got a bit of a disconnect because you don't know how or where in the user journey your feature is actually going to be utilized, and you don't know where in your stack and your architecture it's actually going to live. From a product standpoint, both of those things have big ramifications, let alone where in your business metrics do we expect the value of this feature to be delivered and felt. So I'm going to go back to the slide for Carrie's question here, and I'm going to try and zoom in on a cross section here. Carrie was asking again about the different arm and leg colors. And you'll see there are folks here who do ancillary tasks like tech writing, UI. You might have other folks in an analyst capability and capacity who have green legs. And that is because they physically report up to and are responsible to folks in R&D, user experience, other areas of your company outside of engineering leadership and product leadership. Even your agilists, your scrum masters, ADLs, and sometimes coaches report up to a PMO outside of engineering and product leadership. The intent they're going to follow, the things they need to do to be good employees, come ancillary to product and engineering leadership. They follow that direction. And then you have different color arms. The green armed folks are primarily doing those ancillary tasks that support product and delivery work and engineering work. The blue armed folks are facing the engineering team, facing the engineering process, and engaged in Scrum and delivery, or Kanban and delivery, or any of these other methodologies and delivery on a daily basis. The real interesting nuance are that your product team, including your product owner and your analyst, aren't primarily doing product things on a daily basis. They're going to engineering ceremonies. They are interfacing with the engineering process. Your product manager is the one responsible for doing the product thinking and scoping of strategy in particular, to pass that strategic intent off to the PO and the team to develop tactics around. This is a simplified view of Scrum for a lot of us, and a lot of us are in Kanban or other methodologies too, certainly, but the fact still stands. If only one or two people are the stewards of product thinking in your organization, are incentivized and organized to follow product leadership, that means they can't do it alone. Everyone here's head has to get a little more orange, and we have to start to think more about product with product thinking so we can be successful. So thanks for the chance to revisit that breakdown. Again, in the rest of the presentation, we're going to start with a toolkit that focuses on how to address and make sure we're answering some of these questions. So as we transition to talking about tools, know this is a grab bag of things you can do and influence as a coach to get more people engaged in product thinking and grow better product practices. Again, product in this context is all about maximizing value delivery for users, your business, and key stakeholders. Strategy really involves identifying capabilities that maximize value and sketching guardrails for the development process that's downstream, a downstream consumer of strategy, so that we can develop tactics on top of that strategies. It takes a lot of work to take lateral thinking elements that are inherent in strategy development and make them approachable for folks who aren't doing the lateral thinking, but need to take action on the insights from that lateral thinking to do tactical planning down the road. We're going to use an example of a product called Password Keeper for that reason. It's real complex to go through the machinations of developing a strategy. An example with Password Keeper will simplify it through the rest of this presentation. Password Keeper is a simplified version of something that I've worked on in the past, and all you need to know is that from a product standpoint, we've taken over Password Keeper at a point where it's lagging revenue. The first tool in our toolkit is mission. And mission follows a real simple formula for those downstream consumers of strategy. We want to articulate the product's name, the result of what we do, how we do what we do, and who we do it for. So here's the password keeper example. Password keeper increases confidence and security by automating management and safeguarding of passwords for developers. Seems really simple and really approachable. That's a sign we've probably developed good strategy here, that we've used a good tool to write our mission statement. It wasn't this simple at the beginning. We couldn't articulate the result of what we did, let alone how we did it. And we were struggling to say who we did it for in this concise, precise way. We had to start by making a list of what made our product different than everyone else. And then use the 5 whys, use lateral thinking exercises, the 5 whys, to hone in on the result of what we do and who we do it for. So we had this list of 8 to 10 different things that we thought differentiated us. And for each one, we asked why relentlessly 5 to 7 times until we started to see this trend that what made us different, the result of what we did was we increased confidence and security. And how did we do that? We did it by automating management and safeguarding of passwords specifically for developers. Those were our users. After we write that up, we had to tie it to a specific measurable or goal that influences our chief objective. And this is where the vision for your product comes in. So the password keeper vision was pretty straightforward. We wanted to be ubiquitized, commoditized tooling for engineering. And you're looking at that thinking, what's measurable about that? Our success metric. The word ubiquity had a very serious meaning to us. Every developer had to be comfortable interacting with our product. So to be ubiquitous in that fashion, we had to have satisfaction scores that stayed consistently at 4.8 out of 5 or higher. This is where vision really starts to matter. It's not just words on a page, it's specific and measurable. And we also develop what we call a definition of delivered here that becomes a QC tool to minimize scope creep as we do tactical planning and eliminate distractions. So a definition of delivered in this example for Password Keeper involved 3 things. It was that features needed to be accessible to developers regardless of how much knowledge or maturation those developers had. Password writing and reading also needed to be intuitive for developers at all levels of experience. And we had to have clear and accessible documentation. That sounds really approachable, really easy for tactical planning downstream, but we couldn't articulate it out of the gate. We had to really do some thought work around what consists of successfully delivering on this ubiquity metric. What do we need to do to keep satisfaction scores high? And write that out so we could stay true to it. You're going to start noticing here a trend of linear thinking emerging. And we can trace a straight line from a definition of delivered that I just articulated through our success metrics that you see on screen and our vision all the way up to the mission. The approach we're working through here on building a strategy is intentional. It's about taking complex environments, using our lateral thinking skills like experimentation and discovery, and generating linear patterns so that we can take action and develop within specific boundaries or guardrails to maximize our product success. The next tool in this toolkit is a value proposition. This is where we ask and answer, what value does our vision have for customers and users specifically, where we really put an exclamation point on that user-centric, focused empathy skill. Password Keeper, really straightforward example here. We provide users with a simple interface to securely manage passwords in a way that meets today's engineering best practices. It's also dynamic. Today is new all the time. Engineering best practices evolve. Our value is dynamic. to our users. Therefore, we have to keep up with that tactically. And this isn't something, again, that just poof, we knew what it was, we knew what our value proposition meant. We had to start with a list of problems our users had from user studies we were doing, and solutions we either had or were hoping to develop for those problems. And it was all over the place. That's the nature of a complex environment. And from there, we narrowed down our list of problems and solutions to specific solutions to problems that drove user behavior and needs to meet our success metric of high satisfaction and ubiquity. So for example, in this case, we needed that high satisfaction so that we could get higher adoption and user retention. So we had to pick problems that prohibited people from actually using, adopting, and retaining our product, and kept them from being happy along the way, and make sure we were implementing solutions that made people happy there. Mission and vision with success metrics, definition of delivered, and value proposition. What we just walked through is the landing page of your roadmap. You have to articulate it on that level with that clarity. They encompass and articulate your strategy, so don't put them off to the side. They are the landing page of your roadmap, and display it all publicly as a reference and living document for your teams so that they can use this strategic information to boost product thinking as they transition to tactical planning. So far, we've talked about strategy and how we can get direction and guardrails in strategy for downstream tactical development. If it's all documented and communicated, and we're engaging well as a team, and everyone's doing product thinking at the right levels, then we have a strong culture of product thinking, and we're ready to develop strong products. Road mapping is where we start to transition this strategy and lateral thinking into linear delivery tactics. Developing a product, here's just a quick warning here, developing a product without the information overlay of a roadmap that we're about to walk through, even if you have all the components of a strategy we've gone through so far, if you jump right into a backlog without the overlay of a roadmap, that's jumping into Lord of the Rings Book 2 without any context or having read Book 1. And I know that I just used a Lord of the Ring reference and a Star Trek reference on screen and verbally at the same time. Hopefully my fellow nerds don't skewer me later. But if you take anything away from the rest of this presentation, focus on the questions you're going to see on the right-hand side of your screen in these few final slides as we build out a roadmap structure. And be sure your team has answers to each of those questions during tactical planning and delivery work. We're starting with objectives when we do road mapping. And objectives are high-level goals. We sometimes call these swim lanes. These are the layer above epics. And epics here is a colloquialism I'm using. It's largely driven by JIRA, where we've all worked and lived at some point in our career as Agilists. Objectives sit above epics, and sometimes there's no place for them in JIRA. They should answer the question, what, at a really high level. What are our goals and how will we measure success? An example of the objective, an objective we used successfully for Password Keeper was creating a UI to boost satisfaction. Objectives are the things we must deliver to meet our vision. They're a starting point, you know, and you can start with the solutions you used when you were writing your value statement. A tip here is to quality control your objectives by mapping them back to success metrics and definition of delivered for your vision. Remember, our goal throughout tactical linear planning is to use our strategy as guardrails to focus on value and eliminate scope creep. So if you have an objective that is given to you by a stakeholder but feels ancillary to your definition of delivered and to your vision, maybe it's not a priority, maybe it shouldn't be in your roadmap at all. That's something to effectively challenge if you're using good product thinking. The next layer of your roadmap are epics. And this is where we scope objectives down into incremental value add. The biggest failure point for teams in product strategy, getting into tactics, is to scope epics based on how. Instead, scope them on why. Scope on why the delivery work matters and who we're doing the work for. If you scope how before you scope why and who, you're going to fail. Because at that point, value is effectively lost between your objective and your epic. If your product team is creating epics in Jira that talk about how things get done and not why the work matters, who we are doing it for, and what exactly we're doing, then you're not taking product value through to your epics on your roadmap. It's just lost at the objective level. So an example of epics that do carry forward value for our UI to boost satisfaction objective from Password Keeper. There are two examples I'll give you. One is an epic around creating a landing page, and the other is an epic around onboarding workflows. Once the epics are scoped, then you can start to write acceptance criteria that clarify the what and how of epic delivery. And from there, you can start building a backlog that really articulates what and how you're going to deliver and answers the question, how will we deliver this? But there's another layer to your roadmap that product people need to step up and be accountable for, and that's the feature level. Features are tangible deliverables. They're valuable things or experiences that the output of epics creates. This is your final clarity to answer what are we doing, and it's really the smallest increment of what we're delivering and who we're delivering it to at a small level for that landing page epic we just talked about with Password Keeper. Our landing page should have sign-in capability. We should have a how-to tutorial to show people how to sign in or create a new account. We should have documentation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for each individual tangible feature or experience we expect to generate over the course of executing that landing page epic. You should be able to draw a straight line from each individual feature back to your product mission. And if the two don't feel related, take a moment to map back using your definition of delivered and your success metrics and see where strategy went askew, see where we got off base. Remember that generating and grooming the backlog to answer how will this be delivered is a separate exercise that the delivery team is going to have a lot of involvement in, if not control over. We're talking here about articulating the value proposition at the feature level for your users and sometimes for your business. The outcome of all this work that we've done, creating mission, vision, value proposition, objective, epic, feature-driven roadmap for Password Keeper, we were able to triple the customer base of the product while simultaneously raising satisfaction scores from 40th percentile to the 90th percentile in just 3 months, because we focused on value. This is how you identify and prioritize the value that leads to success. And the ultimate trick here is you define success at the beginning, right where we started, with strong product thinking to identify what you need to deliver, and not even what you need to deliver, but what experience users need to have to add value and be successful. So we'll pause to take some questions before kind of recapping what we've done here tonight. Erin, are there any questions popping up?
The first one was, can an objective be the same as a use case?
Use cases are a tool to articulate objectives. Often what happens in product management and delivery management is we write down a use case and it lives outside of our roadmap. That sucks, because you don't have the knowledge in place when you're doing prioritization of epics, features, and the backlog right there on the roadmap at a higher objective level. If you're using use cases to articulate real high level objectives, write them down, call them objectives above epics, and make sure that they're relevant to your overall vision and mission. That's my plea for all of us as Agilists, is to add this context layer that answers the question, what are our goals and how will we measure it, before breaking things down into epics, features, and a backlog.
Okay. The second question that has come up, does the how tend to change scope very much?
So scope is a great question. Scope can be viewed tactically or strategically. If in the course of answering a question, looking at our roadmap between epic and features, so in this kind of white space in between, as we're scoping out our backlog and answering how are we going to deliver this in particular, if that changes scope of your epic, of your objective, make sure that the increased scope ties clearly back all the way up your roadmap to your value proposition, mission, and vision. What often happens is we generate an epic, like create a UI to boost satisfaction. And as we start answering those, how will we deliver this questions in tactical planning, our linear thinking surfaces a whole bunch of other stuff that needs to get done to enable that epic. And sometimes it's enough other stuff that it becomes another epic, whether it's a maintenance epic or whether it's a different tech debt epic or objective. The key is to make sure that it is all relevant to your overall objective and then to your bigger mission, and below that, vision and value proposition. If it doesn't map back, and this is where we can really use that definition of delivered, features should be accessible to everyone at all levels. Password writing and reading should be intuitive. We have clear, accessible documentation. That was our definition of delivered for Password Keeper. But simple statements like that about how we want the users to interact and actually execute on our vision here.
Okay.
If your scope, your new scope, doesn't map back to that, then maybe it's not a priority. Maybe it falls under a separate objective or epic, or gets downgraded in the backlog because it's not necessary for that vision and value proposition to come to fruition. It feels ruthless, but it's necessary at times.
All right, one final question. How far do you go in terms of design, goal setting, features, etc.? And where do you stop?
I want to make sure I understand this question a little bit more. So the design of goal setting and features, is that what we're asking? And
So now, can I ask you to come off mute and go into a little bit more depth with regard to your question, please? Just to expand, he says, is it a 3 or a 6 month landscape? Was that okay?
All right, so we're gonna have a little bit of fun here. I love this question. I'm gonna simplify it down to how long should your roadmap be? If you are building a roadmap based on time that it takes you to implement something, or based on time in general that you want to implement something, you're skipping value. I advocate to take your roadmap and bucket it into things we're going to do now, things we're going to do soon, and things we're going to do later. And this is going to do 3 things for you and for your team. The first is it's going to force you to come up with a separate delivery tracker or delivery plan to report to leadership and to customers and others like sales or customer success, where you're at in generating this feature layer. So you're going to say feature 1A, which is a landing page, is going to be ready at the end of this next sprint in 2 weeks. That's a lot easier than pulling up a roadmap that has all this other information in it and trying to get your sales, customer success, and engineering leadership to wrap their noggins around all of this value and value-driven scoping strategy conversation just so they can know that the feature they're asking for is going to be ready in 2 weeks. Feature tracking is separate from your roadmap. Your roadmap is a strategy to tactics tool. It's really a map to get you from strategy to tactics and make sure that value carries through from strategy to tactics. Tracking the time-based implementation of that value is a separate artifact that engineering should probably own outright, with product responsibility for communicating and having wider strategic conversations around. If that doesn't fit with the culture of your teams, then your roadmap should have a tail that goes out probably 6 or 7 years, because you're going to have objectives that aren't clearly scoped down into precise epics and features yet, since you're going to have to execute on some things upstream of your objective in strategy development to actually nail down what your new objectives and epics and features are as the market evolves, as you start delivering features that are already on your roadmap and in your backlog, and as customer behavior changes. If you had a time-based roadmap at the beginning of COVID, it got blown up. And if your roadmap was and executing within those time-based parameters was how your organization defined success, congratulations, you failed. Life happened. Everything changed. New priorities, new strategic priorities that changed visions, missions, value proposition came into play, and we had to build out a whole new roadmap under that. If you had a bucket of work you're going to start engaging on now, soon, and in the future, simple prioritize buckets for the roadmap with more clear focus on articulating answers to these questions for objectives, epics, and features. Then your work didn't get blown up, it just got reshuffled and reprioritized. And you don't have to have any heartburn around failing because you aren't delivering in a timely manner on your roadmap. It's a lot to take an organization from a time-based roadmap to this value-driven philosophy and to living and breathing it. It means we have to get our leadership and our teams completely comfortable scrolling all the way back through and doing good product thinking to develop impactful product strategy and tactics that focus on iterative value delivery. It all goes back to getting everyone a bigger product thinking muscle. Hopefully that answers the question. It is a bit prescriptive, and that is ideal state. There are obviously things you can do along the way to cope and make sure value is still flowing through if you have a time-based roadmap. Any other questions?
I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll let you wrap up because I know we're over. The final question is, what might examples of definition of delivered in the UX design space be?
Yeah, so for UX design specifically, if your project or your product is in the UX space and you're having trouble articulating a vision that includes a definition of delivered, take a step back to your user research and use your lateral thinking skills to really hone in on what experiences people are having today and how you'd make those experiences better as part of building your mission and articulating your success metric. Your definition of delivered is going to hone in on that ideal state of how you're going to make the experience better. The outcome of all the work we're doing is maybe increased accessibility, increased flow through the process at a quicker rate. That's increased task success as a success metric, for examples. Your definition of delivered is going to call out specific points of your experience customer journey and how you're going to better those points. That's really all a definition of deliver it is. It's taking your customer's journey map, honing in on the points where you're going to fine tune things with your product, and calling out what that improved user experience looks like. That when you've improved the user experience in X way, you've delivered on your vision. All you have to do is call out what X way looks like. All right, so that was the last question. What we've done here today is pretty straightforward, I think. We've covered a lot of ground, though. We've improved our product thinking skills. We've gained some insight into where your team and you can build better product partnerships and better use product thinking. And we've started to go through a brief toolkit for you and your team to strengthen strategy and tactics. This is really the beginning of a lot of journey. And like I said, we covered a lot of ground doing some very simple exercises. I can help you along the way. I can help you deliver and develop product skills and product thinking individually as a team or as just an individual and a coach. I do coaching and bootcamp style training to help people develop product thinking pretty regularly. I can also come in and help you assess your organization, assess your roadmap, your development practices today, and strengthen your product practices, your program, or your overall infrastructure. I have a wider playbook. What we walked through here in the tactics section, the tools section, is just the beginning of that playbook that we can sit down and go through together and give you even more tools that fit your specific needs and cases. So if you want to follow up this conversation with more questions, with a deeper conversation about how you can get better at product, go to the link here on my website or email me. I'm tossing my email in the chat. Let me know how I can help you, and we'll have some fun. This is really fun stuff. You can't do it alone. Your whole team can get better at it. And it's going to mean that you're delivering value for your users and for your business at an enhanced level. So thank y'all, and thank you, Aaron.
Rob, this was great. For those of you who missed, we did record this presentation, and after we do a little bit of light editing to the slides and the like, or not the slides, but just the file itself, we will get this posted to the Agile Austin YouTube channel, and I will put the link to that over in the meetup invite itself. So everybody, I really wanted to thank you for coming. This was a stretch for us in terms of the work that we normally do around coaching to go over into product coaching as well. So next month, we actually are going to stretch a little bit further because we will be talking with Jenny Bailey, and she will be talking about nonprofit agility, particularly her project called Tales from Mother Earth. So that will be next, it'll be in October, and it'll be the first Monday in October. We'll go back to our regularly scheduled date. So with that, I wanted to thank Brittany. I wanted to thank Rob most especially, and I wanted to thank all of you for attending. We hope to see you next month.